and the one you bring up, the most recent one, is he as much of a slam dunk Marcus Freeman as everybody thinks he is, as being a great hire?
I mean, I think on paper it's the best hire of the Brian Kelly era.
100%. I mean, he's probably going to be able to help with some of the recruits even here in Ohio. So that's going to be really huge for Kelly in the next few recruiting classes.
Yeah. I mean, you look at what he's done since the debacle that was Brian Van Gorder in 2015 and 16. And he's gone, and he's got Mike Elko, who's one of the best, he led the best defense in the SEC in Texas A&M this year. Clark Lee just goes and takes a Vanderbilt job. And now you bring in the hottest name in terms of assistant coaches, defensive coordinators specifically, but definitely defensive coordinators and probably all assistant coaches this past year in terms of head coaching jobs. Besides Sarkisian, yeah, he's doing something right. It's a huge one, and it's absolutely meets the. Seems like he's going to be a great one.
Well, I know, Mark, me and you talked about this a few weeks ago whenever I was last on when he first got hired, and it does a lot of things. First and foremost, it continues a standard for the defensive coordinator position. While it might be the flashiest hire of the three, their last three defensive coordinators, one's the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. The other one is now a head coach in an SEC program at Vanderbilt, and then now one is a guy that was probably the biggest name on the market, like Nick and James have already mentioned. So that's one standard right there. The next one is it just continues with recruiting. Clark Lee was a tremendous recruiter, so was Elko. I think Freeman, at least from a youth and drive standpoint, he might be better than both. And I know Nick was kind of touching on this, but I mean, I think he's offered probably 20 or so kids already since he's gotten the job. He's already landed a kid who was probably going to go to Oklahoma to begin with in Tyson Ford. And it seems like he's really hitting it off with a lot of kids and guys that really enjoyed him while he was the Cincinnati defensive coordinator are now giving Notre Dame a serious look because of the program difference that he's at. So there's a lot of things with that hire that, even if he's maybe not the guy that we thought he was going to be, it's going to help in terms of a ripple effect down the road too. I think it's a pretty standard Notre Dame non-conference schedule. I like that I think they have Purdue back on there, which I like.
Am I missing something, Nathan? Did you say just a pretty standard Notre Dame non-conference schedule?
Well, they were in a conference this year, Mark. I don't know if you knew.
I missed that. That went under the radar, I guess.
Right. No, I don't have the schedule pulled up in front of me. I know that they're going to play Wisconsin like they were supposed to play this year. I think it's going to be played in Soldier Field. And they'll make up the Lambeau one maybe on a later date. Obviously USC, Stanford, Navy are on the schedule. I believe they have Purdue back on, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct. You're correct.
And I love that from a traditional rival standpoint. I've mentioned several times that I'm upset that they don't play Michigan State and Purdue specifically on a yearly basis anymore. I know they play Cincinnati, so that will obviously be pretty interesting with with Marcus Freeman coming over, and I think Cincinnati's going to be a pretty good team next year. They always play a tough schedule, and I think most people realize that. I forget if they have an SEC team on the schedule next year or not, but they usually have an SEC, a couple Big Tens. Obviously Stanford and USC, and I think USC will be pretty good. So, I think it's a pretty standard Notre Dame schedule overall.
Yeah, I think that I don't know about you guys, but the Shamrock series, it's like, wouldn't it have been cooler? And obviously the Wisconsin game last year didn't end up happening, but wouldn't it have been cooler to play Wisconsin at Camp Randall and then Wisconsin to go to Notre Dame Stadium? Like, college football is best played in college football venues. Am I crazy in thinking that way? Like, that's the one little tweak I would like to make to that, of just the pride, the pageantry, everything that makes Saturdays great happens on college campuses. And okay, when you get to the college football playoff, the NFL stadiums are cooler. When you go to big bowl games, NFL stadiums are cool. But nothing beats a Saturday in the fall on whatever your favorite team's campus might be.
You can't argue with that.
Yeah, I think
No,
it's
you
a cool
can't.
change of pace every now and then, but and obviously Lambeau specifically, with all the history they have there, it's kind of like almost playing at Notre Dame Stadium to an extent if you're a visitor. So, I was actually planning on going to that game this year just with a couple friends of mine that were Packer fans and Wisconsin fans. So, from that standpoint, it would have been pretty awesome. And but other than that, no, I agree. I mean, nothing beats going to, like I said, Notre Dame Stadium or playing in the Coliseum or playing in the Rose Bowl and being a visiting team that doesn't get to, experience that as often as, obviously we do. We're probably attending Notre Dame games on a more regular basis than other people do. But I know one of my biggest traditions with my dad is to go to the Coliseum when Notre Dame plays, USC every year, and I love it. So, no, I think I agree overall on that aspect of it.
I will never knock Notre Dame for its schedule. Some people took some shots in 2018 because the schedule, as it played out, was not an extremely difficult schedule, but it was scheduled to be difficult. Virginia Tech was down. USC was down. Florida State was down. Stanford was down. But man, Notre Dame loads it up every year, and this is no different. Looking at the schedule, it's an extremely difficult schedule. Toledo would be the weak link, but hey, if you look at every Power 5 conference schedule, they have 2 to 4 Toledos on the schedule between the 3 non-conference games or 4 non-conference games in the SEC and the ACC, and some underling in conference that's like a Toledo, i.e. Kansas or Vanderbilt. So it's a loaded schedule again, and Notre Dame should never make any excuses for the scheduling because it's always first rate.
I always tell people,
Go ahead, Nathan.
I always tell people this: if Notre Dame schedule's posted, all you have to do is type in Notre Dame future schedules. One of my favorite things to do is look at their schedule 5 years down the road. And usually, if you look at it from right now and then look 5 years down the road, it probably looks better than what it ends up being because it's exactly what you said. You're always going to have some down teams here and there. And ironically, they play Ohio State and Clemson at the same year, I think back-to-back seasons. And it'd be funny if one of those teams was down, and then they get, they get crap for a bad schedule.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of people out there willing to play Clemson and Ohio State in the same year. So we got D-Rock Irish back on here wanting to know what would be a good expected season for Notre Dame from a reasonable standpoint. We'll go clockwise. We'll start with Nick.
I think you look at it and just based off of what's being replaced. I think that Ian Book, he gets criticized for what he wasn't. Oh, you're not a great deep ball thrower. You don't stretch the field a ton. I think you're going to see where you miss Ian Book and appreciate him more for what he was than maybe for some of the things that he wasn't next year. So I think that there's concerns at quarterback position, not like overwhelming concerns, but you're not going to be great there. I think offensive line, you're replacing NFL talent all over it. So there's questions there that need filling. Receivers, they were supposed to be a strength going into this year, despite being an unknown. Now it's another year down the road, and it's again an unknown, but there's a lot of optimism there, but a lot of questions at the same time. Can they figure out ways to not get Kyron Williams is physically beat up in the pass blocking and maybe take his workload off a bit? I look at it right now. You tell me they go 10-2, sign me up for that, just because of what you have going into this year. USC should be pretty good. You're playing the schedule that we just kind of talked about there, and just what has to be replaced. And you factor all that in. If they're 10-2 and they're playing a New Year's Six game, I don't think too many Notre Dame fans are going to be too upset about that. I certainly wouldn't be one of them.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. Also, I think one player that we haven't touched on was Audric Esteem. He might be able to help out with taking the load off Williams. But I think 10-2 is a pretty good year. But personally for me, I just look at the schedule. As tough as it is, I fully expect 11-1, maybe 12-0 if they have a lucky break, and make the playoffs.
I think the standard at this point is 10 wins in the regular season, even in a year like this. I mean, if they didn't get Jack Cohen, I'd maybe say 9-3 with a true freshman Tyler Buckner, kind of going through like the bumps and bruises of being a true freshman possibly. But with Jack Cohen, proven winner at the college level, he might not have the upside of some other guys, but he's proven that he can win, a Big Ten championship or get to the Big Ten championship game. So I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do that with Notre Dame's schedule this year as well, and get them to at least 10-2. So that's the standard. To me, that's like almost like the bar. And a lot of like what James said. I mean, if they catch a break here and there, maybe one of the teams that's supposed to be really good on their schedule isn't as good or something like that, and they're able to go 11-1, 12-0. That wouldn't surprise me, because we're starting to get to that point where the bar might even be better than 10-2. Just with over the last couple seasons, what they've been able to accomplish especially when they have the players to do it. So. And then the one thing I'll throw in on that is, while I do think they might have gotten worse at QB, probably got worse at O-line. I mean, I don't think that they have I don't even think they can be as good as they were on the offensive line with all the guys they're losing. But they are offensive line for in a lot of people's eyes, and they bring in talent every year. But I also think they could be getting better at some other positions. Specifically, I think at wide receiver, there's at least some explosive players there that that can make the passing game better than it was this past season. Tight end with Michael Mayer, I mean, he's only going to be better as a sophomore. I know they're going to miss Tommy Tremble's blocking ability, but I do think that Michael Mayer specifically is going to raise the bar on that position. And then I think that the overall athleticism of the defense is going to continue to improve on a yearly basis. So while they might go down a little bit in certain positions, I think that they have a pretty good opportunity to improve in other spots.